Welcome back to the Crime Scene Insiders. I'm one of your hosts, Dion Watson, and I'm joined by my co-host, Angela Davies, and we're going to take you back under the barrier tape.
Today on the Crime Scene Insiders, we're joined by Peter Faulding. So Dee and I are really looking forward to getting into this conversation with Peter because the work that he does is incredible. So for those that don't know, Peter is the founder and CEO of SGI, which is Specialist Group International. And they're a specialist forensic search and rescue organisation, often called in to assist the police. And Peter and his team tend to go to places other people won't, so often into crawl spaces, diving in the murkiest, darkest underwaters. Peter and his team have been involved in many high-profile cases over the years, and one of the most recent being the Nicola Bulley case. Now, this drew enormous media attention and also quite a bit of controversy. Following a review by the College of Policing, Peter, in a recent podcast with the Geographic Profiler, has unveiled new sonar video footage never seen before in the Nicola Bulley case. So in this conversation, we're going to discuss the work of Peter and his team, some of the cases that he's worked on over the years and his expertise, before we go diving further into the Nicola Bulley conversation and the response to that footage and podcast that's been put out there. So welcome to the show, Peter, and thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks very much for that, Angela. Thank you.
For our listeners who may not know the full scope of your work, can you describe what SGI does and how it differs from traditional police search units?
Yeah, I mean, we've been going since 1995. So I started the business 30th September 1995. So we cover off underwater search with also using vast array of sort of specialist technology that many police units don't have for searching large areas of water. So I pioneered the use of sonar in the UK in 1999. I first ever bring it from the US into the UK and pioneer it, forensic search of water, not like naval, what they use, but for forensic search. And I worked closely with Dr. Mark Harrison, the former National Search Advisor then. Back in 2001, we carried out extensive trials using sonar for large expanses of water. And we sort of became the lead on that. So also cover those who remember Swampy, the anti-roads protester back in
back in the day.
90s. I was the first person in my background. So as a kid, I spent my life exploring disused mine workings with my dad from literally the age of 5. And I learned to tunnel. And from that, I was brought in eventually to remove the roads protesters at Newbury Bypass down the tunnels. And then went on to Honiton, remove Swampy, Manchester Airport, and we become the company to go to remove protesters from trees, from tunnels. That is an area we still cover, but we've been doing that a long time. So we don't go in and drag them out of tunnels or drag them out, that sort of thing. It's all done nicely, build a rapport up them. So we rescue them effectively. We're rescuing people who don't want to be rescued in the nicest possible way. So we'll have a chat. It's quite interesting. You'd be up a tree or down a tunnel having a coffee with a protester, breaking the ice with them really, and just having a chit chat. And eventually, do you want to come down? Do you want us to carry you down? Or do you want us to walk down the stretcher? Or are you going to come down? Oh, I really want to be rescued out of the tree. Okay, they lay in the stretcher, strap them in, and then you bring them down. So it's all done well. And in 30 years now, we've never had an accident or incident. So it's pretty
That's fantastic. Fantastic record over those years.
That's another area we do. So we deal with rescue, water rescue, and flooding and all sorts of things. We do maritime patrols for major infrastructure projects. So we've got a fleet of boats as well. So we specialise in maritime work as well. So there's a lot of stuff and security. We have another security arm which is behind closed doors really, that we don't discuss who our clients are, but we do a lot of high profile sort of specialist security work as well.
It's absolutely fascinating, the work that you do. Also quite a large company, but also really versatile, but really very specialist in the key areas that you're working in.
Yes.
What draws you to that kind of work?
What draws me, I've been driven by events over the years, really. So as I said, as a child, I was exploring disused mines with my dad, and kids then started to get lost down the old mines. And then one day the fire brigade came up and they were starting to go down the mines, but they didn't know their way around. So they needed a scout to show them through. And then I got put on call with them. Then I was introduced to the London Fire Brigade and South Wales. And then I ended up training the search and rescue teams, now USAR, in confined space sort of rescue and shoring up tunnels out. The guys that go to the earthquakes down a place called Fort Whitley in Hampshire. So I started training there, and then 9/11 happened, and then they started then going out to the States to do a lot of their training as well. So, and I was training air ambulance teams, and then eventually brought in to deal with protest work. And then from there on, I sat on the Home Office working group, police and environmental protesting, I think it was 1998. And then we started dealing with obviously protest work, sat on the Home Office working group, and then I started looking at diving, underwater search. Someone said to me, I suggest you look at diving, because dive units are few and far between. I mean, there's only 11 that cover the whole of the United Kingdom now. So one covers Northern
Unbelievable.
Ireland, yes, one whole unit, and that's not many people. That's probably 7, 8, 9 people. Then you've got one that covers Police Scotland. Obviously, it used to be made up of Strathclyde, Northern, and Lothian and Borders Police. Now it's one force, so that covers the whole of Scotland. And
Wow.
one team. And now we've got 9 that cover Great Britain, which is not a lot.
Not a lot at all, is it?
We're very, very scarce on the. So if there was a major incident occurred, we are really have a problem. An aircraft went down in a channel or a boat sunk in the channel, we don't have the coverage, and we don't have that rapid on-call capability. And that's what I've been saying for a long time, and it's pretty shocking, really.
That is quite scary, isn't it?
It is scary, and that's the facts. A lot of people don't want you to know the facts, but that is the actual fact. It's a bit like Marchioness when that happened. If that happened again in London, and they have a team, but other counties, so if you look at the whole of the southeast now, since Nicola Bulley, we were removed as the dive team from Thames Valley, Hampshire, Surrey, Sussex, Kent, and Essex through a flawed report, a misleading report which told lies. So we were removed as the dive team, and so the whole of the southeast of England. The next one is Avon and Somerset. So if Thames Valley have a problem, they got to call in Avon and Somerset or the Met. So if a child was trapped in a car in a flood underwater or someone, they're going to die.
So the capacity is just not large enough to deal with major incidents.
It's not. We were covering 6 counties. We were their immediate response, whether it's murder, crime, or drownings. We were averaging 10 drowning victims a year. Now they don't have that. People being left in rivers. People being left to float up.
So you started working with the police back in the 90s when you were doing the search and rescue and tunnelling. How did you move then into the diving aspect of that?
About 1999, and so I went to brought us the kit back from the US because they made the really good sonar equipment, and also ground penetrating radar at the time as well for looking for buried victims, buried in concrete gardens, whatever. So I pioneered that, and then later on I put the dive team together. We put a dive team together because we were doing counter-terrorist search for a certain organisation. We were searching ships, and then we got involved with HMRC for recovering drugs under ships and things like that. And then we got bigger and bigger, and then people started to use us. I was working with a police national search advisor, Mark Harrison, and he would bring us in various parts of the country, often with our sonar. Even if the police unit had a dive unit, Mark would bring us in with sonar to do the location. So we built a great relationship with the police because they would go call SGI like missing divers. So divers would go missing off the south coast. Even the Somerset Police, his team, Bob Randall, funny enough, now works for me. He would then respond as Avon Somerset to Dorset. They would be the divers. We would be brought into the sonar with a sonar to then go and locate the missing diver in the sea, and they would do the diving. So we just had a natural integration with them, which was really good. So there's no problems.
So you brought in the technology and worked alongside them effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was 2 people missing at the National Dive Centre in 70 metres of water, so the police couldn't locate them. It was too deep, 70 metres. They're not allowed to dive. So we used our remote submarine to actually go down and locate the victims. So then the police divers, we would joint operation over 2 or 3 days at Chepstow. We located them, ops team went in from Avon and Somerset, and we had done a joint operation to recover the bodies from 70 metres of water, which is a very difficult operation. And that was done, and I've still got the letters, thank you letters, to this day. So that's how seamlessly we work alongside the police. They know the capability, and we all work together as one team to one end, effectively, for the ultimately for the victims.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice symbiosis. And you've been doing that for a really long time.
Well, 30 years, funny enough, this year we had 30 years in business, and the Princess Royal come to recognise us for our work. So we had a royal visit, which was absolutely amazing this year. Yeah, it was amazing. And she came down, spent over an hour with her, walking around our establishment and all our industrial units, all the technical equipment, and it was amazing. And she's such a lovely lady. She landed in a local field, and then they come in, and yeah, we had a good chat. And I was really nervous at first, but once I met her, she made you feel really comfortable. She just chatted as if she was your best mate. It was really interesting. So that was a great honour for me.
Well, congratulations on your 30 years and also on the Princess Royal visit. That is an amazing achievement. And clearly you've been working on some incredible cases over the years, a lot of what we would call major crime. And you've worked on also a lot of high profile cases. Is there any one in particular that sticks out for you?
I think there's a couple of interesting ones. Peter Tobin was one. Obviously, those who you, many police followers, but those who didn't, Peter Tobin was probably Britain's one of the biggest serial killers in the UK. He got charged with assaulting 2 little girls down the south coast. He tied them up, and he turned the gas on all them years ago, where we used to have gas tap, hoping the house would explode. They got away. He got arrested, spent, I think it was 10 out of a 14-year term. He then changed his name and then went to Scotland and got a job as a handyman in a church. He then met Angelique Luke, a young girl, and she was found a few weeks later under the floorboards in a trapdoor in a church. That's where Operation Anagram got put together. And that's when they started piecing together Tobin's background. And 15 years earlier, approximately, Vicky Hamilton went missing in Bathgate in Scotland. And this was on the Lothian borders area. So they started to piece together, actually, where Tobin lived in Bathgate. Vicky Hamilton lived in Bathgate. She disappeared from a bus stop. It was brilliant detective work. And then Mark Harrison, again, the National Search Advisor, brought us in to conduct a full forensic search of the house using ground radar, which was another area of my expertise. We arrived, we found a hole in the back garden. Well, we knew there was a rockery, and Tobin was seen by the neighbour to dig this deep hole in the garden. He said, "Are you digging for Australia, Pete?" He said, "I'm digging a sand pit for my little boy." Anyway, a couple of days later, it was all filled in. He said, "Oh, what's the hole filled in?" He said, "Social services told me to fill it in." So we found it again, scanned it with ground radar, got the human remains dogs in. The dogs indicated on the area, and we found disturbed ground. Our forensic archaeologist dug down and followed the original cut lines, and it went down to over 2 meters, but there was nothing there. So then I went in the kitchen and found a void under the floor, which was nothing. Again, the void wouldn't be found without ground radar. It was just natural sinkage. And while I was in the kitchen, my team had called from the loft. We found something, went up there, it was a dagger. And the dagger was actually hidden, secreted in behind the wall in the loft. And they got it put in the tube. It got fastballed away for forensic analysis, and it had Vicky Hamilton's DNA on it. Sadly, that was the murder weapon, and that linked Tobin to the murder of Vicky Hamilton. Now, but there was no body. So then it was really fastball at this time, and then we got called to search a house in Southleigh where we used to rent a room down there. And while we were there, there was an after operation going on with Kent Police, Lucy Seibern, the forensic archaeologist, and her team. They were excavating the garden, Tobin's other address in Margate. So we moved from Scotland. They found Vicky Hamilton. They found Diana Nicole, another young girl who went missing. She was hitchhiking in Surrey. she got in the wrong car, sadly. And what we believe is Vicky was buried originally in that hole in the garden in Scotland. She was then dug up months later when he moved, and he took her in his van and then reburied her because he knew that she would probably get found in Scotland. And that was it. That he was an evil man, absolutely evil. That was one of the biggest cases. I searched for April Jones, and there was another interesting one in Boreham Wood where we had a nosy neighbour come into the police and said, I believe that the dad is 90 and I believe the son's buried him in the garden. And went to the local CID, and the CID said, yeah, okay, it's fine. This was Hertfordshire. And no, don't worry about it. It's not there, you know. Anyway, it got to about 5 years, and it started to get escalated to the Serious Crime Directorate. They then started to look at it and go, something's not right here. All the money from his benefits is going into the account. His son spent it, but actually no sign of dad. And
you're gonna love a nosy neighbour and a dog walker.
Nosy neighbours are brilliant.
And it worked. And it worked. She was the ultimate nosy neighbour, peeking over the edges, you know. And yeah. So Mark Harrison again asked us confidentially, sent me all this information about this address. We looked at it, and we planned an operation just like Tobin over 2 or 3 weeks. And we went in there. The police arrested the son. Funny enough, they put him in a hotel room because he wasn't a threat to anybody. They put him in a secure hotel and just said, stay there. We might need to talk to you, sort of thing, because no one had any evidence of murder. So we started searching. And as I walked in, I started looking around the garage. I found a couple of old hand grenades on the side. There was a couple of the old World War II hand grenades. And being ex-military, I picked them up and unscrewed the top and looked at them and gone, oh, they're dummies. And okay, just left them there and carried on in the garden. We collected radar, and then within 5 minutes, 6 minutes, found that it looked like a buried casket with ground radar. Now, bearing in mind the dogs were running around from the Met, Mandy Chapman, a good friend of mine, and her team were all over the place. People don't know that dogs need a scent. You know, they can't just go through concrete. So they're running all around the garden. So Andy said, do you mind if we just probe the ground? I said, no, you crack on. So I got a big target. It looks like a buried box. Probe the ground. Dog went nuts at this place. Oh. And Dr. Carl Harrison, he started to excavate it and started to see all the cut marks. And then I looked at this box about so big, and I said, well, I think he's either a midget or he's been dismembered. You know, you've got to have some humour when you're doing this sort of. As you know, being CSI, if you don't, you would suffer. People would suffer huge mental problems if they didn't let steam off. You've got to have a laugh.
And it's never done with any disrespect or malice, is it?
Absolutely not. No. Anyway, we were there, and I looked, and it was a buried dog. So we got carried on. Right, okay, carry on searching the garden. And then we got to day 4, and because the SIO said, I believe he's not here, so we're going to pack up. I said, well, I haven't finished this job yet. I need to finish behind the greenhouse and this area. Well, I want you to finish that. I said, well, I'll go when I'm ready. I'll do the job properly.
Want a thorough job done.
Yeah, and he went on, and he said, well, he's not here. So he went off, and I then got a target behind the greenhouse with a radar and said to Chris, take me the magnetometer up. We scanned it twice and said, we got something here.
Carl, I bet the SIO was cursing you.
It was quite funny. Anyway, dug down and we found the body wrapped in a sheet. They said, Peter, do you want to ring the SIO or shall we? Yeah. And you've got the PTCs standing there going, boss, do you want to come back? Sorry to ruin your weekend. And they actually had to turn around and come back. But, that was a good job. And again, without that radar expertise, that person wouldn't have been found. There's so many jobs where I look back, Damien Tudge, you know, in West Mercia, as he was in the river 18 months, they called me in to re-look at the case with the SIO. Say, what do you think, Peter? And I said, he's in the river. He said, we can't be. The Environment Agency said their monitoring equipment would have picked up oil and petrol residue from his car. And we've had a local search and rescue organisation use sonar and searched it 12 times. I said, well, I think looking at cell site, he's in the river. I said, I don't think they've got sonar like we've got. So I spoke to the guy at the time. This was years ago. He said, no, Peter, we've got a fish finder. Big difference. So
is a
again,
huge difference.
this talk about sonar, we have sonar. Everyone puts sonar as one item. It's not, and it's the experience of it. So anyway, after I think it was 15 minutes, we located 2 cars. By the time we dived, we located Damien Tudge after 18 months in a very short time. But again, it just shows you how quick sonar is, and you can close cases down using the right expertise and technology. Things get missed because you haven't got the right operators. So anyone can go and get sonar, but it doesn't mean they're going to find that person. And I think there's lots of cases in England where things have been missed. There was one in Gloucestershire, Cape Prout. The crime scene manager brought in a local firm from Wales to use ground radar. He ran the operation. It wasn't Pulsar led. Julia Marogna was the senior investigating officer on that. I was in London, and she said, Pete, I need you down here like now. She said, it's all gone pear-shaped, this search. So I went down there, and half of the wood was dug up. And I said, what's going on? So, well, we got archaeologists everywhere. We've got this. I said, well, what's the intel we've got? He said he buried his wife in front of the pheasant pens, but we've had it ground radar and there's nothing there. I said, well, where are the pheasant pens? He said, oh, well, they ripped them down this morning. I said, right, okay, stop everything, get rid of everybody today, just send everyone home, and I need time to compose myself and walk around this wood. Just leave a couple of officers there. So what we did, we went to where the pheasant pens were meant to be. The post holes were still there. We put the posts back in the holes exactly to recreate where the pheasant. And we looked at the ground and I said, right, let's draw a semicircle round in the front of each thing. I want you to get the metal detector and I want you to run. Forget GPR because this is sandy soil. If that was clay, it would be seen, but it was like sand. So the ground radar failed to find it. And anyway, Chris the following morning, metal detector, found her watch with the metal detector up just under the surface, and there she was. Oh. So again, she would have been missed if we hadn't have been brought in that particular job. And that's the worrying thing. What really worries me is where technology and expertise go, no, we don't need them, that's fine, we'll get on with it, there's nothing here. But I've heard that so many times where we've come in and then found things that others haven't.
So you're often brought in at the point where traditional policing methods or the technology or expertise level they have actually is not sufficient. It's quite high tech, the things that you're doing. There's also a lot of forensic work that you're doing. Do you have any forensic training at all?
I originally trained with the Forensic Science Service, so I was taught the normal forensic. I'm not a forensic scientist. I specialise in search. Search is my area, so I'm forensically aware, obviously, because we work on crime scenes.
It sounds like a lot of the work you've done and the cases you've worked on have been technically difficult, but also quite emotionally difficult. How do you deal with that as a person?
Where I live, I've got animals, and animals are my sort of real action. I've got dogs and everything, so I'm a big animal lover. And having a good family around you, I think that helps. And for me, I don't struggle with mental health issues or anything like that. I run a big business, so I have to get up in the morning with a spring in my step. First thing I do in the morning, take my dogs for a walk, so around the farm. So I'm sort of lucky enough to have a lot of land. My animals is my escape.
What does success look like for you and your team? Because obviously you're usually dealing with tragedy. So when you're called in, usually you're looking for somebody that's dead at that point.
For me, it's bringing closure to the families, me and my team, and that's what it's about. I'll never forget one where a little lad was fishing with his dad, and dad fell over the back of the fishing boat, and he stood up and went over the side, and we got there very, very late at night, and I said, well, we're going to be working in the dark. Let's regroup in the morning. Let's speak to the lad. So anyway, the following morning, I met with the mother of the victim, the wife, and the lad, and I said, where did dad go in? I'm really sorry, as I said, and he pointed in the rough direction. I run the sonar and found him straight away, and then we put the divers in. But the difficult bit for me on there, I said to the police, I need to do the right thing here, and I need to tell the family that we found him. I can't not do that. And the police officer said that that's so you can deal with it if you wouldn't mind. I said, no, that's fine. So I went and spoke to, I said, sorry to say, but we found him. And they just both collapsed in front of me. And that was difficult because I had tears in my eyes. I had to walk away. I just had to walk away at that stage. And that's what I find difficult. I have to do this so many times because often when we're there, the family are there. And I don't like lying to the family, or, I won't lie anyway, but I mean, misleading the family. It's better to be honest.
Yeah,
and
you don't want to give them a false
them.
sense of hope or anything like that.
No, and say if you found them, we are going to be recovering the body. I suggest you now take yourselves away. You don't want to see this. And then we put the tent up, and then we tend to bag people underwater generally. We put them
And you
in the
do
body
that?
bag. Yeah, we cut the corners off.
Amazing.
So we cut, if we're not looking for forensic evidence, we cut the corners of the body bag off. So then as it comes out onto the bank, because there's people around with cameras, and then it's in the stretcher. So we always recover in a stretcher with a bag. So as the stretcher comes up the bank, the water runs out.
Water comes out.
Yeah, at the bottom. Leave it there for a minute. It's always on a line, so it can't go anywhere. And we train to do that.
So it seems like over the years, you've actually had a really great relationship working alongside the police, and you've been doing it for decades. Would you say in the main that you've had a good relationship with them?
We've always had a good relationship, always. But there's always been but if you remember, there was a case of Ellis Downs who drowned. So Thames Valley Police got rid of their underwater search unit in 2014. They disbanded it. It was disbanded by the Police and Crime Commissioner. Sussex Police got rid of theirs. And so
is that to do with budgets, do you think, Peter? Is it it's
all budgets. That's what's happened. So we only got 9 left now, covering Great Britain. And you look at it and you think there's just not enough, and the public don't realise this. And
no,
that disbanded. So Ellis drowned. It was a very hot day. He decided to take a swim across a river. And Darren Downs, his father, won't mind me talking about it. He swam across the river, got out, and his friend said, "Come on, Ellis, walk round. I'll be all right. I'll swim back." And he swam back halfway and drowned in the middle. So multi-agency, sort of fire service, police, they never had a dive unit. They brought sonar in. They brought marine units in from Hampshire. They searched and searched and searched. The family were getting very frustrated. And on the Monday, they put an appeal out in the media. So my wife said to me, this family need help. So we rang the family and said, we can help, but we'll talk to the police. Rang the police control room, and they said, yeah, great, if you can help. So we went up halfway there, got a call from the police search advisor, and he said, you're not to come any further, you're to turn around and go back, we don't need you. But this is hostile. Okay. And I don't take crap really from people. And I thought, I'm just going to crack on here. I'm going to meet the family. You will not go any further. He said, I'll meet you outside Abingdon. So we agreed to meet in a car park. So this guy, we got to the car park first, out of town. And then this white van turned up. And he said, I said, oh, that's GI. He said, I know you are. And I said, right, okay. Really hostile. And I said, we're going down to help the family dive. He said, you're not diving, I'm in charge. He then come out, he said, I'm an ex-police diver who lost my job, here. So that I said, so that's what this is all about, is it?
That's what it was.
Politics. Here we go. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going down to the scene and I'm going to go down and meet the family. You go down there, I'll have you arrested. I said, please do. And I went down the river, and there was a guy, as I walked, family are all there. This was actually disgusting. We were not allowed to dive. This was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That night, it got to 8 o'clock. The family surrounded the inspector, and Darren was crying, and my son were going to jump in the river, and finally, you're not doing nothing. Turned to critical incident. They then, senior command said, just let SGI dive. And we dived, recovered his body in 40 minutes.
Now, that's horrific.
And he was found where he went down, okay, and no one could find him.
How had they missed him? Were they having divers down there?
No, they had no divers because they didn't, and the Met were due to come on Tuesday, which isn't acceptable. They were going to let them float up. And this is the thing, what
That's
happened,
awful for the family.
the following morning, Nikki Ross, who was the ACC at the time, had to apologise on behalf of her force. It went all across the national media. And in the IOPC report, I took part in that. They called the Met, and the Met said, do not use SGI. ACPO, dive committee, senior officer there, said, do not use SGI. So it's all building a big picture. They just don't want us involved. So this was all written down in the official report, the Ellis Downs report. So they were trying to solve, because they don't like a private firm coming in and doing their work. It's politics at
So
a very senior level.
They're cutting budgets.
That's
They're
right.
not providing an effective service. They don't
And
have
they
the
were
capacity,
happy.
but then they won't work
But
with
they
a
were
private
happy.
company in the same vein.
The Met Police and ACPO were happy to leave a lad in a river for another day because of politics. How's that?
That's
It's in the report. Ellis Downs report, you just read it, the Independent Office of Police Conduct into Ellis Downs. It's shocking. And this is wrong. And they were happy to leave him there another day because it's egos again. Absolutely.
And why do that to the family? That's appalling. It's no service to the victim or the family. That's horrendous.
But it's happened again recently. We were called in by the family of Xylo after the Nicola Bulley case, a 2-year-old lad who got washed away in the river. And we got invited up by the Leicestershire police through the request of the family. The media spun it all round that, SGI weren't welcome. They were. And the ACC was absolutely brilliant. And she said, give Peter a full briefing. While we're there, the National Police Search Advisor said, do not use SGI. The College of Policing emailed the Chief Constable to say, do not use SGI. This is a 2-year-old little boy. This has to come out. This is what's happening behind closed doors. It's after the Nicola Bulley case, we were now the enemy.
Was Ellis Downs post or pre Nicola Bulley?
Oh, that was pre. So
that was pre.
Thames Valley didn't have a dive team, but then I met Nikki Ross at the Women in Policing Awards, and she agreed that we got it badly wrong, and I would like you to do our diving. So we signed an MOU with them. So the MOU was not financial; it was only £400 an hour when we got called out. So they had to pay no retainer. I funded it myself, the dive unit, so through company profits. So we had the dive unit. So from the time of call out to the time we returned, which was within a few hours always, because we recovered them so quick, then it would cost them £2,000, £3,000. That was it.
Actually, if you think about the amount of resources the police will use on that, how long they'll be down at the scene, and the fact that they don't have capacity, so it takes so much longer. Actually, when you think about wages, that cost effective, it's much more cost effective to bring yourselves in, have you in and out.
It's nothing. It's nothing. Without think of money, it's nothing. The money we're spending now on other things, but wasted public funds. So that happened there. Then we went down to Sebastian Sales Search, again called in by the family. Police search advisor wouldn't even talk to me, and they made us work in the dark. So they said, you can't go in the river during the day because we're searching. It never happened before. And it was again that Dad was going mad, and they brought 2 dive units in quickly because they couldn't find him for 10 days. They knew that we would find him, and suddenly they brought Avon Somerset and Devon and Cornwall in. 2 dive units, unheard of, because we were there.
It's unbelievable, because at the end of the day, does it really matter who finds the person? Surely everybody's dealing with the same ultimate goal of finding that person to get closure for the loved one. So why does it matter who finds them?
There's egos out there. They don't like it. And if hoping that all this other stuff, there needs to be full investigation of what's caused all this, and it will open up a big can of worms.
So we've got the incident with Ellis Downs there, where things didn't go too well with the police because it sounded political, and obviously a police diver was running that operation, or ex-police diver who clearly had lost his job. In terms of other relationships with policing, has it always gone relatively well?
Oh, we've always had great relationships with the police. Those who worked me over the years. I mean, if you take Surrey Sussex, Thames Valley, Hampshire, all these forces that we work for and recovered evidence quickly. You know, great relationships with the SOs. They brief me fully. They don't hold back. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're dealing with, and we work seamlessly. There's never an issue. And post Ellis Downs, I mean, we had a great relationship with Thames Valley Police. There's never been an issue with the police at all, and I continue to work with the police in our other work that we do on a daily basis. So we have no issues with police. It's just the few who have created the problem. So again, it's rumours, you know, and things like this, which is the wrong thing to do. It's very damaging. And if they knew me, you know, I'm working at a very senior level all the time, and we're very credible and confidential. You know, we're not a company who go out to the media and tell everything we're doing. We might get seen on a job, but we're not making comment.
Yeah. And I think that leads us really nicely onto the Nicola Bulley case, because this has been quite career changing for you, this case, hasn't it? It's had significant impact. Can you talk us through how you became involved in the Nicola Bulley case and what your role was, just for those that have not yet seen the Geographic Profiler podcast, which we will put a link to, by the way, because it is fantastic and it goes into great detail, and also for those that don't know what your role was within it.
Yeah, so in the week before, Sky News contacted me, as they always do, like the Thai Cave Rescue and things like that. They asked me to give commentary on how can a woman go missing in an area of water and not be found, just disappear off the face of the earth. So I'd done a bit on Sky. I didn't get paid for that. It's just you know, people think I make money out of that. It was just commentary on, like I'm talking to you online now. And then it got to the Sunday, and I got a call from the family, Paul, the partner of Nicola Bulley, to say, Peter, can you help us? We'll pay whatever you need. I said, I don't want money. I'm not going to accept no money. I've seen it in the media. I said, I'm happy to bring my expertise up. As long as you can just pay for our accommodation, that'll be fine. And he said, well, a friend Emma's got a farm. You can stay there. There wasn't enough room, so I stayed separately in a hotel, which, again, I paid for myself. So I said, we can't just come up and barge into a police operation. We need permission from the police to come up. It's not, you know, although we can search, it's not a crime scene. We don't want to upset the locals. You know, that's not the way to do it. So the police contacted me that afternoon, and he was fine, the police search advisor, and he said, you're working under your own health and safety, you're responsible for your own equipment, but we will give you the areas to search. I said, that's fine. When are you coming up? And my team drove up that day. I flew the helicopter up the following morning, landed at Emma's farm, and then I was greeted by the police search advisor, Paul and Emma, and the family liaison officer. So then I drove to scene with my colleague, and he said, there's media absolutely everywhere waiting for you to arrive. And I said, well, I haven't even told anyone I'm coming up. So that's interesting. So they knew we were coming through the family, and I got there, and there's just a barrage of cameras flashing, you know, and I went into a command unit to get changed into my suit. The team had already put the boat in the water, set sonar up for me, ready to go. And I had a chat with the search advisor. I said, I need a press officer down there to deal with the media. He said, there's not one available. And I said, well, I can't deal with this, you know, and I need to have a chat with the senior investigating officer. He said she won't talk to you. So
did they give a reason why the senior investigating officer wouldn't talk to you?
No. It was very blunt. Everything was very blunt. And I briefed my team, and the team said, something's not right here. It just doesn't. There's no search going on. There's nothing. There's no police activity anywhere. And funny enough, Dave from the Sun newspaper said that. He said, do you know what, Peter? There's nothing been happening for days here. Not seen no search activity going on anywhere in the area. Not here. Not seen anybody.
Oh, strange.
Just the odd officer walking around. So I walked down to the river, and the media, to be fair, the media were very good to me. They didn't hound me, what people think. They didn't hound me. They followed us, but they didn't interrupt me because they knew I had a job to do with the team. So they were very polite, and I want to make that very clear. So we went down to the river.
A kind of cordon blocking the media from a certain place within the search area or scene?
It was a free-for-all. There was media climbing down the riverbank with cameras, which is their job. They're just doing their job. They were following us. They had drones above us. And I looked across to the weir and I said, Nicola, there's no way she got over that weir because it was too shallow. There was rocks the other side. She would have landed on the rocks. And the team all agreed. Now, and the police search advisor wanted us to search downriver because I wanted to search the hot zone, the area where she went missing. He said, no, you're going downriver. I want you to go down towards the sea because that's where we're focusing our search on. And I sort of said, okay, fine. So we got in the boat. We started the boat and we started trolling down the river with sonar. Crystal clear. I could see every stick laying on the bottom. And it was shallow in places. We had to navigate around shallow bits where, because it is tidal, that part. You've got to remember up to the weir, from the sea up to, it's very slow tidal and it goes up and it goes down. But I can see everything. If she was in the reeds, sniffer dogs, public members of the public would have picked the smell up, as you know. The dog would have found us straight away, and drones, helicopters. And we went down a place called Cartford Bridge, and we couldn't get any further because it was so shallow. It was down to shallow stones, as you saw in Doug's documentary podcast. It was really shallow. So we bailed out there, and I said to the team, "There's no way is she here. Right, we'll pack the boat up. I'll re-go through the sonar footage. I'll double check in, and we'll regroup in the morning." So I went back that afternoon, and then the police search advisor with the inspector come over and said, "There's a bit of paper. I just need to sign that you're happy for your own health and safety, or anything, etc., etc." So one sheet, and I said, "Yeah, okay," and I signed it on the side of the truck in front of my colleagues. Later, that turned to an NDA, which was never an NDA, but they've never been able to produce it.
I was going to say, is that what they claimed to be the NDA? But it was actually a health and safety form.
Look, running a big business, I know what an NDA is. It was nothing, and and they've never produced it at the COP review. We've asked for it, they've never been able to produce that in so-called NDA. There will obviously be electronic records if it had been done, but no one's produced it anyway. So the following day, second day, the 7th, arrived the 6th, we were searched downriver, went to the 7th. Our job was to go from the bench up to Rowan Water, from the bench upriver, because that had not been searched.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Why had that not been searched?
10 days. Well, exactly. Why had it not been searched for 10 days? So up to Rowan Water is quite a big stretch of water. So when I got down to the river, I said to my team, because I did look the night before, I said, "There's no way Nicola's gone in this bench. It's too shallow. You can see there's a big rock shelf. She would have landed on the rock shelf." And the pollster made the decision, as in the COP review, on day one, she's gone over the weir. First, he's not qualified in water. He's not got no experience. He has made that decision, backed up the SO. She's gone over the weir. Says in the report, the area in front of the bench was searched twice. She wasn't in front of the bench. We'll come on to this. As we got our boat in, I said, "Take me to the hot zone." They did not want us in the hot zone because I said, "I want to do the hot zone." He said, "No, we've searched it many times. You don't need to do that."
And they had searched, hadn't they? Maybe 3 or 4 times it was, allegedly.
Very conflicting, because in the COP review, he said after the 29th, she went missing on the 27th. Searches were surface-based rather than sonar and dive. Surface-based means people walking along the surface. So I think the decision was made to put her straight away. She'd gone over the weir, and the bench was focused on that area in front of the bench. So when the search began, I said to my team, "Right, take me down into that hot zone. I want to go down to the weir." So we come down from Rowan Water. We went all the way down towards the weir. We couldn't get past that corner. You can see it in Doug's video. It's very shallow. So we started to go upriver. And then as we passed a little thing called the island, I got a big shadow there. And I said to the team, "Something there, we'll go up and turn around." So that was a couple of minutes later. So we went upriver. We turned around at the bench. We come back down to the river. I'd already put the marker on the software, and there was a big tree laying on the bottom up near the bench. You could see the tree. It was in deep water out in the middle of the river. And as we gone down, I said to the team straight away, I could see her arms, and I said, "I think I found her. Right, take me back. Let's rescan that again." This was at 10:34. So what I done then at 10:53, screenshotted the arms, which is, to me, in all my experience since 99, I know what a pair of arms looks like and tree branches. You know, I can see it's symmetrical. It's you don't get that. You can see the head in the middle. And I called the pollster and I said, I think I found her. We need to put divers in now. I want to put our divers in. You are not to dive. You are not to dive. He made it very clear. We
Now,
will dive.
do you know why they wouldn't let you dive? Is it, sorry,
Well,
let me rephrase that. Is it usual that when you're on one of these jobs, if you find a target, you usually would send your divers down?
absolutely. Time's critical because that target could
Mhm.
move.
Yeah.
So although this river was benign, I mean, the river wasn't moving, to be fair, so the chance of it. But normally, if you've got a credible dive team on site, but it was their, like I said before, it was their operation. So to
Yeah.
be fair, they have got their own dive team. So I wasn't. It's not about that. It doesn't matter whose dives. It's irrelevant. I go, okay, that's fair comment. So what we did, we put a stick in the marker. Normally, what we would do, we would put a shot float in the water to mark the rough area. And when I say a rough area, what you've got to allow for is my sonar signal, the GPS fix, is coming from the laptop, rugged laptop at the front of the boat.
Yeah.
Then you've got to allow for fluctuation. The sonar toe fish is at the back. It's called layback. So you could have 3, 5 meters, 6 meters of fluctuation from that particular target. So we put a stick in on the bank. Now, they dived anyway. I carried on upriver because we didn't want to highlight. Now, this is important. This was the only confidential operational information I had, so I didn't even tell the family. It was totally confidential. We found, well, I thought, you know, this is Nicola, and I'm going to keep this quiet. We can't let anybody know that this has happened. So we carried on upriver. They dived. I then got a call from John, who's an ex-Sussex police diver, my supervisor. He's ex-Sussex police. And he said, Pete, he said, they've said there's nothing there. I said, what? Nothing there? Well, it can't be nothing. I can see it clearly. He said, no, they've said there's nothing there. And I've gone, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't. Something's not right. Anyway, my mind was like, what's going on? So then I jumped out the boat, and as I climbed out the rope, I think it was a lady from GB News collared me and said, "Oh, Peter, can I just have a quick chat with you?" And they were everywhere, you know. I said, "Yeah, sure, okay." And rather than be rude, I just thought, "Okay, fine." So she said, "Well, what have you found anything?" I said, "Well, I can categorically state there's nothing in this river because the police diver just told me there's nothing there."
Yeah.
And then I've gone back and I thought, what have I just said? Hang on. And I spoke to the team. I said, we need to go back. That's definitely Nicola. We need to go back when there's no police around and we need to rescan that area. So we waited for the police divers to go away. It's interesting because they all got round in a huddle. We were chatting, they were all chatting a very close huddle before they dived. And it was really not quite normal. And then we went back to the truck. We had some tea and had a chat. So when they were all cleared up, we'll go back down. So we went back down in the boat, and I needed to get a better picture because if you see the original picture in the morning, if you look at Specialist Group International website, you see Nicola Bulley search. All the documents are on there, so it's all transparent. I need to get closer to the bank to see the body. I can see the shadows,
Yeah.
but I can't see the body. So we did. So Ollie literally drove the boat, and it was so close to the bank. We were hitting the bank to get the sonar fish giving us the right direction. And there was the picture. And I said to my team, without a doubt, you know. So the following morning, we went back, said to Pulse, I want to put our divers in at the weir, and I want to work upriver in case the target's moved, and I want to re-sonar that area, retrack it with a thing. He said, no, you're not. We've done it. You're going home today.
And sending you off the
And
job.
sending me off the job. I was absolutely, I didn't trust anybody at all up there now at this stage. And the family member, I'm not going to name them, a family friend was walking around with me. And I threw a stick in at the bench. And we waited 20 minutes and watched it. And I've actually put a 30-second clip of the video up on my thing. And it just laid there. It didn't move. The stick wasn't moving. This was on the 8th. And I said, no way she gone over this way. I just said, it's impossible. Anyway, I walked around with a family friend, and then walking along, I suddenly saw some reeds were put up against a a tree. And that doesn't look right, I said to Lee. So I went and scraped it away, and underneath I could find disturbed ground, some cut marks out just over a foot long. And I started scraping the soil away, and the inspector from the underwater search unit came across. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I found some disturbed ground, needs checking. Fill it in and walk away."
Fill
I
it
said, "Well,
in.
yeah, fill it in and work away." I said, "This could be evidence buried." He said, "Fill it in, we'll check that." And he walked off. And I said, "Are you not going to do anything about it? You're not going to mark it?" He said, "Leave it alone." And he just walked off.
So strange.
And then later on in the COP review, that came out that I told the family that I found a body deposition site digging a big hole. That you can see the pictures. The beauty of it, I always take photographs, so that covers my back. And I took
It's very
time,
sensible,
date,
isn't it?
reference site. That has now proven that they lied in the report completely. But then that afternoon, I was with the family. Again, I remember walking down to the river with Paul because we couldn't do anything. We were effectively leaving. The family were in the back of the truck saying, "I want the shed searched in the village." They didn't do that. And then I said, "You need to get a senior officer down there to brief what's going on because no one's given any updates." They then turned that round to say that I was asking for a photo opportunity with the chief officer in the report. Complete lies. And the last thing I want to do is photo opportunity with the chief officer. I've been in every media outlet for the last few days, not that I wanted to be there. They said this was on the 9th. I wasn't even there on the 9th. I was flying home. I was on my flight software.
Sent you
I
home.
was going home.
The other thing is, you've been doing this for so long and worked at such a senior level. Why now all of a sudden do you need a photo op with a chief officer? It just doesn't add up, does it?
I would not want a photo, and got many witnesses who can vouch for that. I said that you need a senior officer because at that stage we walked down the river with Paul, the partner, because he wanted to go back to the river with me. And they were looking down the river, and he said, "I just don't know how, Nicola, how she disappeared in a stretch of water like this. Is she in the water?" I said, "I don't know, Paul." I said, We don't know. We don't know where she is, but, it's really odd." And I didn't give him the information that I said that we'd found a target and they wouldn't let us die because I knew that would then appear in the media that I misled the family. And I couldn't trust anybody at Lancashire at that stage. I lost faith that day, and I thought, I don't know what to do at this stage. So my next opportunity will be to the inquest.
Yeah.
I'm going to get invited to the inquest. I've got to be. I can then present my evidence. And then on the 16th, a few days later after we left, I got a letter from the National Crime Agency suspending me from their expert database to say that you're suspended. No reason. Then it got leaked to the Times newspaper by a law enforcement source. So then my name was all like expert struck off, sort of thing. So they're very convenient. So now I'm not fit to go to an inquest, am I? Because I'm no longer credible. See,
that's appalling.
Very clever.
That must have been a huge shock for you.
It was a shock, but especially to be released into the public, into the, to the media. It was leaked deliberately to discredit.
Very clever, though, isn't it?
It was very clever. And then I was advised by some very senior ex-officers saying, "Peter, you've been set up here. I've got lots of phone calls. The rumours going around, you've been set up and you need to be ready for this." And then I got invited to the COP review. I thought, oh, great. At least that's going to be independent, I assumed. Little did I know. And then I got some dates and they wanted to sign me an NDA before I went. I said, "No, I'm not signing an NDA." And then they accidentally sent me a number of questions by mistake. They were meant to say PF questions. And they quickly withdrew the email. I'd already saved it. I'm not always online. Lucky I was that day. And I went, bingo, boss. And I quickly saved the document. And I've got the actual email to confirm it was withdrawn. And then a few weeks later, I kept chasing and said, when are we going to get together? And it was being done in a London hotel. And I thought, how can you hold a confidential review in a conference room in a London hotel? So I took a witness with me, who was an ex-senior officer. And we arrived. And it was all about, why did you go against the police narrative? Nothing about the search. Why did you choose to talk to the media? Why did you say this? Why did you say that? There was nothing at all about my search. It was very carefully contrived. And I got to the end. I said, I found Nicola. And I said, I've got some imagery to show you. We showed them the shadow images because my colleague who was with me said, don't give them the full works. Let's see how interested they are. We need to draw them out. And as soon as I got there, she said, I'm a police officer. I want you to sign an NDA. You refused 4. You're going to sign 4 times in the meeting. She asked me to sign an NDA, putting me under pressure. And I refused. We then got to the end and I said, I've got some news. She said, you've got 5 minutes because we got to give the room back. I said, sorry, you've got 5 minutes because we got to get the room back. I said, well, somebody needs to look at this data.
They've completely controlled the narrative, haven't they?
They have. So then I walked away from there. Then I realised the report was coming out. I got a tip off. Sky News rang me and said they're holding a press conference about you today behind closed doors. And they're going to talk about your sonar images. And basically, when it all finished, they said they're trying to discredit your info, but you're going to claim that you found Nicola Bulley, but don't believe it. We've had experts look at it from a still image. No one's ever seen my data. So that was one.
So they and then FOI held a private press conference and told the press before anything that you were going to claim this, and they were not. So then controlling the press narrative as well.
It was non-reportable. They were not allowed to take screenshots. It was a strictly non-reportable process with that to agree it. And then what happened months later, a person put an FOI in and sent it to me through the post. You might be interested in this, Peter. So I got a copy of the FOI, which is fantastic. So I've actually got that and I've released that in my evidence. So then I wrote to them to say that, have you seen that letter where I actually write to the police and say, this is without doubt Nicola Bulley. With the trust in the UK police at an all-time low, you need to take this seriously to prevent further damage, and you need to be open and transparent with the public. They then come back 4 or 5 days later on the 2nd, bearing in mind there's a weekend in between, to say that we've taken expert advice. The experts have said it doesn't take human form, and the police divers said there was nothing there. And you will be criticised in the report. So I thought, I'm going to be criticised in the report. Am I right? Okay, well, I need to be prepared for this. So then, less than the day before it was released, I got an embargoed copy of the report sent to me at 14:45 from the COP, embargoed the day before. It had already been ready to publish. Wow, absolutely hammering.
No time to respond.
Now, I had to sign an NDA at that point. I had to say I won't release or talk about it. Of course, I've now signed an NDA. Can't take it to a law firm. Can't do anything. And now they published it the following day, and it absolutely annihilated me. I was named 58 times in the review. My company was named 30 times. Not one police officer was named. A senior officer at Lancashire refused to take part in the review. And all it was about is Peter Faulding caused problems. He done this. But what they didn't say is that I found her. And they suppressed the evidence from everybody. Now, they didn't realise that I would actually go out, because Martin Brunt from Sky News, he said in the review to Sandy Marsh and Andrew Snowden, who's now a Conservative MP, he commissioned the report, actually said, by the way, Peter Faulding claims he found Nicola within 6 minutes. What have we got to say on that? And Andy Marsh turned around and said, we've searched the area twice in front of the bench, and again on the thing. She wasn't in front of the bench. She was 75 metres from the bench. So don't mislead the public. Then another journalist said to him, she said, your report is pretty, I can't exact words, but particularly scathing and damaging against Peter Faulding. How the hell's that happened? And he just went off on a side tangent. So they know what they've done wrong. And basically, Nicola was found within 6 minutes of my search of that day, and the evidence was withheld from the public, the inquest, and the family didn't even know that. Although in the letter they said they'd spoken to the family, showed them the images, and they're clearly upset. And then they changed the College of Policing review to tree branches. And the diver said they'd never dived in such a clear, unobstructed body of water with such a flat bottom. Where Nicola was, it wasn't flat. if you look at my statement, she's actually circled inside a sandbank with highlighted in blue.
Now, I've seen the footage, I've watched it a number of times because I find it fascinating. And as you're moving down the river, there are a couple of tree branches that you can see that quite clearly are tree branches, even to the untrained eye. You think, oh, that's a tree branch. And then as you're moving along, you can see the shadow. And as you draw around it, you can see that it takes human form. Like, again, to the untrained eye, I saw it and thought that looks like human form. That would be, I imagine, a credible target. And then in the podcast that you've done, they also had another independent sonographer on there who, again, verified that it is human form and would be a credible target.
But I think one of the most important bits here, sorry, Dee, I think one of the most important bits here is in the review, they said an independent government expert has reviewed this. Now, they've never had the live data. They've had a PDF image. How wrong is that? Now, also, these experts are unnamed. They happen to name me, but if you're an expert, you should be named in any review. If it was you giving evidence in the court, you can't suppress that information from the public. And apparently, and this is what Douglas has said, and bearing in mind he's a geographer, he's researched, this is the only case-specific review that the College of Policing have ever carried out. Now, why was that done? Now, Andrew Snowden, who was the crime commissioner at the time, commissioned this report himself. Because he commissioned it, he's away from it now. He can't be looked at. So he's given it to the College of Policing. Effectively, they can now mark their own homework very cleverly. Exactly. If this was an IOPC review, they would absolutely rip them to pieces.
Interestingly, Dee and I were talking about this before we came on to record for you, because we were saying, why have the College of Policing had this? Why has this not gone to the IOPC? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
I had a look, and the thing is, they do say that the College of Policing is independent, but it's not really independent in our eyes anyway, because a lot of the staff are ex-police or they are actually seconded police. So I don't think that you can say that they're an independent body. And actually, on your review, there's 2 named officers, and both of those are ex-police, one being an ex-chief constable and one being a detective chief superintendent. So can you truly say that they are independent? I don't believe so.
No, they're not. And that's why I've been transparent. That's why I put all the documentation out, because if this is done behind closed doors, I could have got lawyers involved at an early stage. I'm taking legal advice at the moment because I'm shortly going to be issuing proceedings against them. Today, also writing to the Home Secretary. I'm writing to the Prime Minister. I'm writing to the Home Affairs Select Committee and asking the Independent Office of Police Conduct to now, under, I think, Section 10, to actually review this whole case and go independently into this, because they're going to find lots of skeletons in the cupboard on this one. Why have I put it on Facebook and Twitter? Because the public needs to know what's gone on here. We've got the Post Office Horizon scandal, which was covered up for years, and it was only one man, Sir Alan Bates, who brought this into the public eye with a BBC documentary to expose the truth. Now then, people have now had to give damehoods back. They've now gone from the businesses, and this is the same thing. I'm not out to apportion blame. This is destroying the reputation of the hard-working police officers, CSIs every day, who are doing a great job. And I've got the ultimate respect for the emergency services. But it's the decisions made by a few at the top, the leaders, which I call weak leaders, who are frightened of their own shadows, who won't even have the, balls to actually go out there and actually admit that they failed. Their search failed. I don't care who failed, Nicola. It's not about that. We've got to help families in the future. That's all I'm after. I'm not after, I don't want to be suing people. You know, if they come out and said, maybe we've made some mistakes, it could all be buried quite easily and go, and the public would actually look at the police and go, do you know what? Good on you. You've actually held your hands up.
Well, because you're
We
being
all,
honest throughout, and it's about
yeah,
accountability, isn't it? Now,
Exactly.
I don't think that this investigation was run very well from the outset. And I don't think that the media was managed well from the outset. And I think that caused a lot of problems and a lot of speculation without then you coming in the work that you've done and what's happened here. Like, even that aside, the whole investigation was a little bit farcical.
so from day one, they started blaming YouTubers. They started blaming members of the public. They started blaming me for everything. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about the YouTubers. It was about their own control of the whole operation.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at that sadly, that little job of that little baby who went missing down in Sussex, and also the one where Xylo, the little 2-year-old lad, Michaela Kerr, who was the assistant chief constable, she was giving bi-daily updates on that operation. The police actually come out gleaming from that. They've done such a good search. They brought all the necessary expertise in, and there was no negative press. There wasn't YouTubers trying to make things up about it. It was just well run by a good police force. That's what we
Yeah.
need across the Britain. We need good
Yeah.
leaders like her. She was absolutely outstanding, and she had no hold. She had me and said, "Pete, I'm going to brief you on absolutely everything we've got. This is what I want you to do." And she was getting me to actually brief the family each day on the search, see, with an FLO.
And that's
That's what
teamwork, isn't it? When you've got an FLO. And
teamwork.
actually, if you'd have had a press
Yeah,
officer with you when you requested it,
yeah.
maybe that
Yeah.
could have been controlled a little
Well, they
better.
would have dealt. They would have, but again, they said in
Yeah.
the report that we had gold level meetings about Mr. Faulding, and we briefed him not to talk to the media. Not one occasion did anyone tell me not to talk to the media. Not because if they did, I would gone. Of course, I won't,
Fair enough.
and that's
Yeah.
it. But they never did. So they misled the public on that. They
And
misled the
also,
public.
you had that opportunity to inform both the family and the press that you found a credible target, but you didn't.
I agreed in an email that they sent me that if you get any fines, it must be kept confidential. Operational information is confidential, and that's always the way I've maintained. And the only time that I chose to release this information was when a scathing review came out about me. And then the final straw was the BBC documentary, because they come down to see me, said, I said, I don't want to be pitched against the police. Oh, we wouldn't do that. Yes, they did. And then I refused to take part because I knew what was going to happen. I was going to be pitched against Lancashire police, and I didn't want that. All I wanted was the truth to be told. And I said, I did find Nicola. I showed them the footage, and they gone, yeah, okay, thanks for that. And they walked off. Now, they knew that I had that credible evidence, but they didn't. This was well after the review came out. So that's when I chose to release the images. And then more recently, when things have boiled up again, I chose to release the live data to tell the whole truth. And all I want to do now is give evidence in front of the Home Affairs Select Committee, my evidence and my expert, to say, why has this happened? How can you put a flawed report into the public domain, which is causing massive damage to the UK police?
Because the thing is, as well, if it is such an independent report, how can they take information from the police but not take any information from yourself? That doesn't scream independency either, does it?
No, it was out to destroy me. That's what this was about. The whole thing was all about me because I went against their narrative. I always said that the phone on the bench was potentially a decoy. And like Doug said, crime scene staged. There was because they got it wrong. They never even take the area off on day one. The media were all over the bench. CSIs, that should have been sealed off. Not just the bench. That whole field should have been sealed off. The whole footpath should have been sealed off. That should have been treated as a crime scene from day one.
Should have been cordoned.
Trace evidence. The mobile phone you might have got earprints, fingerprints. You might have got anything on that. And there's no way Nicola went in at the bench. She would have been found there. She went in further down the river near where I found her originally. That's where, and I think personally, she didn't fall in. She didn't jump in. And I think she met her death in another way, which needs further investigation.
The trouble is with that now is that any potential evidence of that is completely eradicated.
But there was a
Yeah.
man in black seen, you see, in the area, and there were screams heard. The only time the screams that were heard were never mentioned during the police press conferences. Nothing. It was only ever mentioned at the inquest. And then that some expert come along said they were inhalation screams. I can guarantee you, don't inhale water and
No,
scream at the
scream
same
at the
time.
same time.
So
No.
Yeah.
then two independent witnesses heard screams by the river that day. At that time, there was a man in black seen by another witness, which was only again mentioned at the inquest. There's never mentioned again. Who was this man in black? Seen twice by the same witness, and he disappeared.
I
Lots of
think
strange things.
the trouble is
So
that,
many.
that we always say in investigation, you follow the ABC rule, assume nothing, believe nobody, challenge everything. And I think that it sounds like the Lancashire police have gone into this with quite a closed mind. They've made a decision that she's gone in the water and decided to take herself in there from the outset, and basically treated as a missing person, search for a body, and they've not treated it as a crime scene or forensically, and not kept an open mind as to other potentials within that case.
I think there's
What
lots
it
of things
seems
here.
like.
But even the Lowland Rescue, a great organisation, wanted to send lots of volunteers to this area to search as well. That was refused at senior level. All that help was refused. They could have searched the river going upwards, up to Rome Water before we got there. That could have all been eliminated.
Why
But
do you
they
think that
didn't.
they've done this? Why do you think that they've stopped people helping the search?
I
Why
don't
do you
know.
think they stopped you searching the hot zone? I'm trying to figure what it is they could possibly get from doing what they've done, from these
I think
decisions that
there's
they've
lots
made.
here. Apparently, there was also in the car park at the school, police car, who caught Nicola on dashcam footage. Who was that? Who is that police officer? Where is that police officer? Where was the dashcam footage of her scene? Why was that never shown?
No.
So that was really interesting. Why have we never seen that footage released to anybody? There's something not quite
Something not
right
quite right, isn't there?
with this whole case. So there's something not right here that needs to be delved into.
You know that there's something not quite right when they're looking for a scapegoat
Import.
and they're looking to
Yeah.
divert attention.
Well, the day after, apparently, again in the COP review, they brought the Defence Science and Technology Lab in with advanced sonar. There's no talk of that, no evidence of that sonar. So did they then want them to confirm that that was Nicola in the river? Now, people will be saying, how did Nicola get found by a member of the public, Jason Rothwell, further down over the weir? How did she get there? Well, what's happened, and this is acknowledged in the College of Policing report, that's why I believe they knew she was there. So where I found her by the island, that was probably 150, 200 meters from the weir. Now that was impossible to move from that location, even if once she bloated slightly, and I'll be a bit graphic, as you know, she would have gassed up and she could move slightly. She wouldn't go far because she couldn't get past the shallows. But on the 18th and 19th, there was an exceptionally high tide from the River Wye, the lower level, the tidal section, that has flooded over the thing. I think it's 20 cubic meters a second have come over the weir, flooded the top section of the river that would have lifted a body and carried her downriver. They've acknowledged that. They've acknowledged that they believe they knew she was there already, because why would they actually put that 20 cubic meters flooding over there? Why would they even mention over the weir
Yes.
if she wasn't there?
Yeah.
But it's clearly marked. If you read the report, it's there. And then what's happened? She's been lifted from where I found her, probably pushed upriver slightly. She's now buoyant because she's decomposed, and she's been carried down as the river's ebbed out. Now she's gone over the weir to be carried down, and now she's been found by Jason Rothwell. And he saw her apparently float. She wasn't found in the reeds. She was actually floating down the river when he saw her. That's been confirmed. She ended up in the reeds because as the tide moved her, then she ended up being laid to rest in the reeds. Very,
Like you
very
say,
interesting.
if they didn't have a clue that she was there in that location, then
Yep.
they wouldn't then have the foresight to think when the tide changes, she's
No,
going to move and
they
then we're going to
wouldn't.
find her over the weir.
and they wouldn't mention the weir. They would just say that a huge tidal surge in the lower part of the river. And what you've got to look at is if everyone looks at my statement and the online videos, you'll see what Doug does. With the geographic profiler, Douglas McGregor, you look at that video, it's brilliant. And we actually show all that. You can show how shallow it is in front of the bench and the river's not moving at all.
Yeah.
It just needs a full investigation as to what's
It really
gone on
does.
here. And I'm really hoping that the Home Secretary now goes, I'm not happy with this.
Fingers crossed.
That would
I hope so.
help restore public confidence in our policing again.
Do you know the area that you found her? If they were to have sent police divers in, what's the chance of not spotting her? Was it really deep? Was it really murky?
It was murky, but what you've done, it was a very short dive. That's the other interesting thing. So in the COP review, the police diver said, we dived the exact coordinates that SGI gave us. Now, I never gave them any coordinates. I only gave them coordinates a year later for the COP review. So they never dived that coordinates. So I pushed a stick on in the riverbank. So again, that was a misleading statement as well. And the diver said they never dived such an unobstructed, clear body of water. And again, their dive, it was watched by my dive supervisor and one of my team who called it a chip shop dive. They never even put a jackstay across the river. They were only in a very short time. The diver went in and they'd done a quick search and they came out. That's not a search. To search that stretch of water properly would take probably an hour to do properly with a grid search, with a proper systematic search, because you've got GPS fluctuation. Like I said, you would start down here and you would work upriver.
And we all know, as well, for us as CSIs, that when you search in an area, of course, we don't go underwater, but you do systematically search and you use different processes, whether it's line, whether it's circular, whether it's grid searching. And I imagine the same principle would be applied underwater.
We do. We get a rough area where we put the shot marker in or the stick, and then you'll move forward. Probably realistically, you'd probably go 8-10 meters or 5 meters down that way, and then you'd put your jackstay weighted either end. You'd move it up each time. So you swim the line backwards and forwards, move it across, swim the line, and you're feeling for everything. We're not looking for a knife here. We're looking for a missing lady. So it's easy to search, but you must follow that line. And that way you want to search downriver and come up, because obviously if you search upriver, search from the top down, then the body could be moving. So you go there and then you come up, and each time you're going to pick it up. And the river wasn't moving anyway. I mean, there's a picture of our boat sticking out in the channel with a rope tied on at the side, and it's staying straight out. If there was a current, it would be moved sideways. And also the diver said that they searched the area. When you look at my report, the shadows in the morning that I found of the arms are there. In the afternoon, the shadows hadn't changed. Now, if that was so-called tree branches, which I can tell you it's not, I know what a tree branch looks like. If it was tree branches, they would have had to be moved by the diver to check underneath it in case someone had put debris on top of her. Okay. Now, that tree branches hadn't moved. There was no ground disturbance, and our sonar would pick up footprints. So there was nothing changed, and the shadows would change. The shadows would shift. So if you imagine standing in the field with the sun behind you, if you were there at that point, and then in the late, you'd then decide to turn that way, the shadows would go that way. It's exactly the same with this. That area had not been checked by a diver. We've got sonar evidence of it. It's not been touched because there's not a mark anywhere where the diver's been. So it's proven that they didn't realise we had the detail of this sonar when they wrote the report.
Yeah.
This sonar is such a clever piece of equipment.
Do you think they just dismissed what you told them then and didn't do a thorough search because they were dismissive of you saying you had found her?
I personally, I don't know what's happened, but I think there's something a lot more sinister gone on here than meets the eye. I think there's a lot more to this job than meets the eye. And I personally think there are certain people at a senior level know what's happened here, but it's been chosen to be covered up. And it's very clear that that's happened because the report has been written scathing against me and
It
the
is.
evidence speaks for itself. My solicitors have looked at this. They've said this is defamation. There's nowhere to go with this for defamation because I've been named publicly. But because it's been gone in the world's media that experts struck off, this is not a small case. This is at the press conference. I was, this expert is no longer on the expert list because we fed that up to the National Crime Agency. I mean, outrageous.
It is outrageous.
It is awful.
Why would you choose to defame a man who's done such good for this country?
Good work. That's it.
And if I was not thought of, we wouldn't have the Princess Royal come and visit us.
So you've been taken off the police database. You've obviously had your name and your company dragged through the mud on the press nationally and internationally. How has this impacted yourself and your organisation?
The morale for a while was a bit low, but I said, let me deal with this. I'll lead from the front. And it hasn't affected our work. We were busier than ever, which is good.
That's
financially
good.
We're stronger. So in that area, it's good. We've only been discredited in the search community, not in the police community in general, because people know we're a credible organisation to work with, in our security side and all our other work we do, which is confidential. But did it affect me? I'm a bit of a fighter and I don't take it laying down. So if anyone tries to discredit me, I will go after them. And that's what I'm doing now.
So I think that might be a nice place to start rounding up. After everything you've been through publicly, what's keeping you motivated?
I think it's just SGI doing what's best for the public and do what we're good at. We always strive for perfection in everything. We invest heavily in the best technology, what's out there to do the proper job rather than wing it. We don't want to wing it. I get up with a spring in my step each day. I don't let these people get me down. But yeah, we move on, and I just want to continue working with the police and the emergency services. What we do, providing a good service to the public and to bring closure to the families out there who need help.
Fantastic. Well, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, Peter. It's been great to learn more about yourself and SGI and what you guys do, as well as addressing some of the things that have happened in the Nicola Bulley case. We will put links to the podcast that was put out, which was the geographic profile on the Nicola Bulley case. And there's it goes into a lot more detail in there. And honestly, please listen to it because it is fascinating. We'll also put some links out to your social media as well, so people can have access to the documents that you've been talking about and go and have a look for themselves if they're interested. And also, Peter has written a very fascinating book, if people want to learn even more, called What Lies Beneath. And that's out currently, isn't it? It was out around the time of Nicola Bulley.
It was out prior to that. I mean, I wrote that the year before, so everyone would think I wrote a book about it. I didn't. It was actually the launch on the 2nd of February before we went and searched for Nicola. Sadly, we had to cancel all the publicity for that book due to the Nicola Bulley search. So we actually, on the Sunday, I got invited to Paul, and I was due to do Times Radio and different radio stations and TV the following week to promote it, and we had to cancel all the publicity for that book due to the Nicola Bulley search, because I couldn't be seen to be discussing books while you're doing a search. So it's
which again is respectful.
It is.
Yeah, no, we absolutely we did the right thing. And no, thank you for that, and it's been lovely talking to you. And people. Hopefully we can make a change, and that's really important for me and my team and for everybody out there. I think we need transparency.
And thank you so much, Peter, for coming on. Like Ange says, we found it fascinating. I'm sure all of our listeners will too. And to all of our listeners, please remember, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, if you can subscribe on our channels where you're watching it. And thank you again for listening. And we will be back in a fortnight's time, where we will take you back under the barrier tape.